I'm Debbie Bellingham. I live in Milton, New York, and I'm a woman who wakes up every morning eager to hear God's voice of love and then to share what God has spoken to me through my writing and my words in my life. That's kind of my tagline for life, wake up, hear, and then share. And so I'm glad to share with you what I have gleaned, if you will, from some of the wilderness experiences from my life's journey. And so I have been a pastor at a church in San Francisco, where I moved here from. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified spiritual director. I'm a graduate of the Spiritual Formation Academy. Thank you, the Methodist Church. And I'm under treatment for cancer right now, and I have a lovely home and a lovely family. And so I work with people and individuals. I work in group settings. I facilitate retreats and classes, and I write. I write a prayer almost every day and publish that to the public. And then I write essays and commentaries, devotional type commentaries on different subjects. That I take great comfort in following Jesus into the wilderness experience like he experienced, as it's told in the Gospels, because in Mark it says that he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. So I can trust that if Jesus had entered the wilderness being led by the Spirit, that when I enter such experiences as well, I'm not alone in them. The Spirit is with me. And even though some of the wilderness experiences in my life have been trails I've taken off the main path of God's heart of love, willfully and waywardly, in retrospect, I can see how the Spirit was accompanying me and using that rebellious moment or that anger or whatever it was that made me shake my fist at God and caused me to mature and to grow and to form me more into the likeness of Christ. When Jesus was in the wilderness and he was with the wild beasts, I understand that to be, for me, the wild beasts that are with me when I enter wilderness experiences. And those wilderness experiences are moments where I feel as if I'm alone, I'm lost. God may feel as if God's not present. I'm angry or I'm frustrated and I have a huge decision to make and I'm not sure how to go about it. The wild beasts that accompany me on those wilderness experiences are usually voices from within myself or areas of my life where I am challenged to trust God, to believe God's promises, to step out in faith. And so I feel that those wilderness experiences are useful because they purify me. They show me the areas of my life where when I'm tempted by Satan and the wild beasts are roaring in my head about how I'm not good enough or God doesn't love me or is God enough to trust with my whole life, all those kind of voices that come from that vacant place in my spirit, they help me know myself better and help me know God better and help me know how to operate in the world better. So I've come to not begrudge the wilderness experiences or the desert experiences. I've come, in fact, to welcome them because I see them as a tool in the Spirit's hands to mold me more into the likeness of Christ and to make me more available to the Spirit to be used of Christ. As I mentioned earlier, there's some that I've taken willfully, just jumped off the boat and dove into the ocean of wilderness. Like one particular incident was when I was in my late 20s and I'd always wanted to be married or have an intimate partner and I never had. And so I was kind of angry at God about that. All my friends were married. And so I decided to go out and get it on my own, that intimate relationship, because there was a man that was asking me out and he was attractive and he liked me and he had a wonderful family, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we started going out and then I told him, the day I told him that we could move our relationship to a more intimate level, we were out with some friends and I found him in the corner of the club we were at, making out with another woman. And I was crushed. And I was so angry. I wasn't so much angry at him. I was angry at God, because if God didn't give me what I wanted, I was going to go out and get it on my own. And God wouldn't even let me do that, because I was smart enough to say, this is not the right guy for me if he's going to act like this. But that was a wilderness experience where I purposefully turned my back on God. And yet I know the Spirit used it in my life. I know that the Spirit refined me, got out my protest, showed me my rebellious spirit, showed me how I was demanding of God, wanting to make God jump through the hoops that I had established, in my life. And it took a long time, but I came through that season feeling as if God was enough. And those wild beasts are the parts within me that are yet converted to the gospel. They've not yet believed that God loves me completely and that God is 100% trustworthy. They're the parts of me that where doubt rises up, or anger rises up, or I have demands that I think God should meet it for me. And they kind of rush at me. Oh, sorry, I'm shaking. They rush at me and challenge my identity as Christ's beloved. They challenge my ability to be used of the Lord. So those are the kind of voices that come up in my head that I have to like a lion tamer, get out a whip and a chair and kind of get them to get in line and perform and line up under what I know is truth. And in that process, I'm finding that I discover pockets of my soul that are very resistant to lining up with truth, because they're used to having their way. It's that part of my soul is used to being in control and, relying on common familiar comforts instead of relying on the God of comfort. And so I become aware of habits, and I bring them to the Lord, and I invite God to help me examine them and see what gives life and what squelches life. So those wild beasts are there, and I just have to admit them, look at them, confess them, strategize away with God's help and with community to manage them, and to be able to identify them more quickly, because almost every day could be a wilderness experience, because those wild beasts are not easily quieted. It takes practice. I think I've gotten to the comfort of it, if you will. That's kind of a strange word, because it's never really comfortable. It's more a space of relying and trusting. And like you say, it's not pleasant, but it's doable. And I think it just takes practicing dying every day. George MacDonald said, we all die every day, but some of us come back to life every day. And so it's like daily, I have choices to make. Am I going to trust myself, or am I going to trust God? Am I going to step out in faith, or am I going to lurch back in fear? So each one of those little decisions throughout my life and throughout my day and has trained some muscles in me to be strong enough to trust in the bigger wilderness experiences of my life. And I mean, I've had quite a few situational wildernesses that have forced me to face those wild beasts and to process my emotional reaction and all that kind of accompanying noise with God's presence, in God's presence, job losses, financial setbacks, breakups, health issues, facing my mortality, all kinds of things. But I think it all is, I'm able to bear the weight of big life wilderness issues, like current cancer I'm being treated for, because I practiced it every day, or I try to practice it every day. To St. Teresa of Avila calls them the little dyings. Once I had this impression from the Spirit that I was to fast from sugar for 40 days. And I go, come on, it's almost Christmas. Who wants to fast at Christmas time, but I felt very strongly that I needed to. And I said, well, okay. So, I told Jack and blah, blah, blah. And then every time I wanted a cookie or something like that to kind of, I was bored or, I wanted to entertain myself in some manner, I'd get up and walk into the kitchen without thinking, because it was just robotic action. That's just what I would do when I was in those situations. And as I'd walk in the kitchen, I'd remember and I'd say, well, which do I want more, this cookie or Jesus? And when the choice was that simple, it was obvious. I wanted Jesus more than I wanted a cookie. And so like little practices like that of dying to your own agenda and your own demands and your own habitual way of walking in death can open you up to trusting and opens me up to trusting and relying and choosing God's agenda. From my own experience, well, as I already talked about a little bit, practicing the daily dying, is really builds that muscle so that you can bear the big dyings that are bound for you. But I think it begins with remembering that if you're in this wilderness place or this desert place, you're not there by accident. You may have made the choice to go there, but God is bigger. God knows us. God can accompany us in those places of darkness or wilderness or isolation. And so to remember that truth, even when you don't necessarily feel it, just remember it. You're not alone. God has gone with you. God can be found there, and God will show you there, and God will show you the way to life, make a way to life. And then once you kind of accepted that, God's got me here. I mean, I may have chosen this road, but God's with me on this road, and it's going to be useful for God's purpose in my life somehow. And you kind of adjusted to that, mindset. Then face those beasts, ask why go underneath, why am I so angry? Or why does this disappoint me so? Or why do I lose my temper around this situation? Or why am I so sad? Try to get to the core underlying emotions, if you will, that are igniting this sense, or that are not ignited, that are evoked through this situation. They're inside you already. And this desert or this wilderness situation lets them show their face, and they show their face so you can deal with them. And that's been my experience anyway. And so I keep asking, what's going on? I try to listen and understand my voices, the voices that are deriding me or minimizing me or dismissing me, and try to get to the source of why that's my go-to response, and ask for healing in those places, because obviously there are places that are wounded if I have to defend myself or, protect myself in some manner. And I ask for God's Spirit to come in and touch those places where they are wounded, and to keep showing them to me as they come up. And I think admitting your real feelings about it is really important. Like if I'm really mad at God because he's got me in this place and I'm bored there, or I miss, and I used to have insights, and every word in the scripture was kind of pregnant with meaning, and now it's just like, it's just another chapter. If I'm bored with that, or if I'm angry with God about that, or if I'm, whatever, I try to be just really honest in confessing my true self and my true emotions and stances in those situations. And finally, I think the biggest thing I've learned is just to hold steady. If you can remember that God's got a purpose, or God will make a good use of this wilderness. If I can remember to keep clinging to that promise and to cling to Jesus and keep faithful to my practices, that's really important, to remain faithful to my practices, even if I don't feel much fruit coming from them. That's not necessarily the case, because look at Mother Teresa. And Saint Teresa of Avila talked about prayer is the water of our spiritual life, and the water or prayer is not for our benefit necessarily, it's for the flowers that grow in the garden. So if you're feeling dry and like you don't have a lot of prayer life going on or whatever, Don't look at your own experience. Look at the garden. Look around you. Are there virtues growing in your life? Do you experience the fruit of the Spirit? Are you getting feedback that you're, like you mentioned earlier, you felt like I was so resilient. I don't feel like I'm so resilient. I think I'm just doing what I do. So, look at the fruit. So hold on. That's probably my big encouragement, that just because you don't feel it doesn't mean just because you don't feel the joy of prayer doesn't mean the prayer isn't effective. So stay faithful.